Hey, I'm Jace, and thank you for listening to my podcast, Drop Balls and Big Calls. This week, Ross Niven, he opens up about his journey through grief, mental health, and a personal transformation following the death of his mother. He reflects on his childhood, a life-altering accident, and the evolution of his identity, particularly in his role as a father. Ross shares how the COVID-19 pandemic became both a challenge and a catalyst for growth, how therapy helped him navigate through PTSD, and why he's now more intentional than ever about expressing love and presence. This episode is a moving reflection on healing, spirituality, and what truly matters in the face of loss. I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. It was a great chat, and I really appreciate Ross for all his time. Enjoy.
Yes. All right, Ross. Welcome back to Drop Balls and Big Calls.
Thank you very much.
For context, we've actually done this already, but yeah, I'm no good with the technology side, so we've lost that one, and we're going to have another crack and go about it completely differently because I revisited our conversation and feel like I didn't do your story justice. So I think someone was looking down on us and said, we need to do that again, and we'll do it better this time, better than ever.
I was
And we'll
going to
do it
say
justice.
it's a hell of a way to just want to spend time with someone.
Well, you know I love you, mate.
That's why I was happy to do it. Super fine with me.
And it is also State of Origin night, so it does also give us a little bit of an opportunity to talk about the game ahead, which is scary if you're Queensland supporters like us.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, scary times. But mate, let's start with telling everyone a bit about who you are. Who is Ross Niven, for those that don't know you?
Okay. So I'm Ross. I am a husband, father, musician, cabin crew, hockey fanatic. That's really about it. That's everything in a nutshell at the moment.
That's still a lot of hats to wear.
Yeah, it keeps me busy, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome, mate. So you've gone through quite a big period of change in your life, in your family, and we're going to come to that eventually, because one thing I've actually spent the last few days doing is revisiting some videos that you've been posting pretty much over the last I'd say year, which you called the grief diaries around the passing of your mum. And one of the most beautiful things I've actually watched, really captured, I think, everything about that process and what you've been going through. And I think it really taught me a lot as well. And I think it's going to teach others a lot about grief, how you handle those situations. So I'd like to spend some time today going through those things, and obviously, if that's okay with you.
Oh, 100%, mate. That's why it's up there to be talked about.
Yeah, awesome, mate. But maybe we'll go back to some of your early years, because I think this will really help shape that picture of what your family means to you.
Yeah, okay.
Tell us about little Ross. What was life like for you growing up in those early years? What's your earliest childhood memory?
Almost sounds inappropriate.
Doesn't it?
It does, but that's fine. Young Ross, we moved out from the UK when I was just over one, and we moved into migrant flats when we moved into Australia. So we were the only white family that lived there, and it was, obviously way too young to remember, but the stories are pretty harrowing from my parents that they would tell me. And I think that really drove home the acceptance of everyone. And so that's the way it's been within the family for a long time. Everyone is, for all intents and purposes, equal. And so, we moved from there to the eastern suburbs, northeastern suburbs. And I went to primary school there, went to high school. Developed an absolute love of music when I was about 8 or 9, and it has never left me. It's stuck with me the whole time. And I've been lucky enough to utilize that on and off over the years, mostly on, which is great. But I would say music is the heartbeat that keeps us moving, and humor plays a massive part in our family in a big way.
Couldn't half tell, my friend. Couldn't half tell. Do you remember much of that time, particularly from when you started entering school? What was it like as a migrant family? Do you remember much of that time?
Look, because we were white, we were, we're from Scotland, so it was just a quick assimilation. It would be more of a thing for mum and dad than me, because, I've developed an Aussie accent very quickly, so it was just normal. Yeah. So, you do get You do. I still get it now. Whenever you tell someone you're Scottish or you're Scottish background, it's like, oh, Scottish. It's like, well, would you do that if I was Chinese? Like, would you? No, you wouldn't. But it's fine. It's fine. I know it comes from a place of love and fun, because that's the way the Scots are. They're really good fun, and that's, it's always been. I think that's part of the reason we're such good humored people. We deal with everything with humor. Everything. Even the moment my mum passed away, within 10 seconds, my dad and I were laughing, because there was something that humorous. It's been our way to deal with things, and we're very fortunate. So sometimes it gets dark. Very, very funny, but dark. And yeah, like I said, it's been that way all the way through.
Going back to your schooling, you mentioned you weren't in any bands or anything throughout your schooling years, but you had something else quite monumental happening in those school years, where you were involved in quite a serious accident.
Yes. So I was, for all intents and purposes, hit by a truck, or accurately, probably we collided, and I used my face as the brake rather than the brakes themselves. So I ended up with injuries above the neck that were huge. Spent 2 weeks in hospital and then recovering and all that kind of stuff. But the effects of it, with the exception of a couple of things, I didn't really find any of it until we had kids. And then that was when I was diagnosed with PTSD, which was really interesting, because after my accident, when I went back to high school, I was put into sessions with a psychologist, which I couldn't understand, because apart from the physical aspects, I actually felt fine. Well, I didn't think I had any problems. So I'm sure it was more precautionary than anything. She was wonderful, and I just went about my day, went about my business. And you're in your 20s and you're indestructible, and then you have kids and you work out, oh, okay, maybe that little accident had a bit more of an effect on me than I thought. So yes, I was diagnosed with PTSD, which sort of meshes in with anxiety and depression that I deal with. Yeah, so that was a big one. Music obviously played a big part in the recovery there. I had a really good friend that would just constantly lend me CDs, and that introduced me to different bands and different music, and that was really exciting. But yeah, swings and roundabouts. I got introduced to fantastic bands, but had to smash my face in to do it.
What a way to look at it.
Yeah.
But your dad was a big catalyst in actually seeking support for the things you were experiencing after that.
Yeah. So when I had moved to the US, and with my ex, who's from the US, and to really cut a long story short, we both worked out that neither of us wanted to live in each other's countries, essentially. So I was happy to live in the US, but not where she lived. I wanted to go to the West Coast, and she was, her one of her sisters they were about to start a family, and she wanted to be there for that. And obviously that's super fine. So we had split up essentially over geography, and that was a very tough thing to bounce back from, because it's not like someone is an asshole and this person's mean and blah, blah, blah. It was, you still have feelings for this person, but you literally cannot be together, because it's just not going to work. So it took a long time to get past that. However, I had moved back from the US into mum and dad's place, and I was sitting on the couch one day, and my dad sat next to me on the couch. He was sitting forward and he faced towards me, and I looked at him and he just broke down, absolutely lost it, which was really jarring. And I'm like, well, what's wrong? Because I thought something had happened. And he said, something with you isn't right, and I want you to go and speak to someone. And it was the first time that I'd had that barometer of, clearly something isn't right. I couldn't see it myself. So, and my dad's reaction was, like I said, it was jarring. So clearly he wasn't, making things up or seeing things that weren't there. And so that started my inroad into working with my psychologist, who I've been with for 23 years, 22 years. She's amazing.
That's massive.
Yeah, I love her to pieces. She's brilliant. I was just fortunate that the first psych I went to, I just clicked with, because a lot of times people don't have that. So I've been really fortunate to work with her on and off over the years. And that was my initial diagnosis with depression. And then further on down the track, anxiety crept in, and then that was diagnosed, and then PTSD was diagnosed. So it's been quite a journey, and I've been really, really grateful and thankful for, again, my psych, who's been brilliant, and my parents were always awesome and a great support. And I have a really good friendship base. And I've always been fortunate that, even though you move through different circles, to have those people that will, I don't want to say call you out, that will bring it up to you. I think something's not right. It's so important. So I've been really lucky in that regard.
Yeah, that's massive, man. And like you said, like it is so hard to connect with a psych first go. Like that's amazing that you're able to do that, but also that longevity as well. Like that's not easy either. So
no, not at all.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I started seeing her when I was, well, no, that's not true. Down the line, I was in a relationship I wasn't happy in a job I hated, a friendship group that was disintegrating. So she has literally seen my life evolve into becoming a father of two, married, in a job that I've been at for 17 years, happy. It's the one thing I find kind of funny is you can't develop that personal relationship. Like, I know she's married and, they go on holidays. That's about the extent of it. You can't really have that personal relationship with them. But she is such an important part of my life,
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's incredible, man. Thanks for sharing that.
No,
Obviously, that was a period where you mentioned your friendship group's falling apart. You're stuck in this job that you hate, relationship issues. Like, that's something that so many people are going through right now. And for a lot of people, and I think we've both been there ourselves, you can't see a way out of that at times.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to them at this point in their lives?
That's a tough one, because really it just came down to the fact, particularly with that relationship, we both knew it wasn't working. It just took one of us to go, that's it. Like, one of you has to make the stop to move forward. The funny thing was with flying, it was actually her that sent in my resumes to all the airlines. Like I said, I had no confidence. I didn't think they were going to hire me at all. I came home one Friday night and she goes, "Oh, by the way, I've just sent your resume off to all the airlines in Australia." And I'm like, all right, whatever.
She sent it, not you.
She sent them all in. So it was because of her I got the job, really, because I didn't believe in myself. They're not going to hire me. Here we are 17 years later, still doing it. So I'll forever be grateful to her for that.
So yeah, Jetstar.
Yep, 17 years flying there now. It has been the best thing I've ever done. It really reaffirmed the fact that, I think I was on a base level of confidence. Then when I started flying, I was put into positions where, really trying positions of, dealing with people, safety, all that kind of stuff. You just progressively build up your confidence, and it has done me a world of good. I adore it. Like I said, 17 years, so I still love flying. These days, I also train new crew, so I'm an in-flight trainer. So I train people that just come out of ground school. And I've also taken on a position called a wings peer support person, which is really what it says. It's just a person that's there to support people with any issues they may have. We thought there would be a lot of mental health stuff. There's myself and 3 other people. I would say mental health is probably about 60% of what we do. And the rest has been just curveballs, like a ton of curveballs. So we've dealt with everything from homelessness to sexual harassment to you name it, we've probably dealt with it. And that's been a brilliant experience. It's easily my most favorite thing I've done.
That's amazing. How did you find the transition to becoming a mentor and into leadership?
I think I've always wanted to give back, but not really knowing how, especially without an official qualification on how to actually do it. So for us to do this position, we had to do a mental health first aid training course. And even after that, like, it's a short course, but you look at the cabin in an entirely different way. You look at people in an entirely different way, and your interactions are totally different. So whereas you may have someone that, something happens, you're normally like, oh my God, what an asshole. Now you're looking at them like, okay, something's going on here. It clearly is a lot deeper than what we think it actually is. And so you just kind of deal with people, in a softer way, while still, fulfilling your role and doing all that kind of stuff, at least online. But in terms of the cabin crew, like I said, I have 17 years experience. Chances are with a lot of it, I may have already dealt with it myself, particularly when it comes to anxiety and, things like what's happened with the Air India flight recently. It can really rattle you a little bit as cabin crew. You're already heightened. You have a heightened awareness, but that can really shake you up. Especially when it's an aircraft that we have in our fleet. It's a really, I think it could really unsettle you seeing an aircraft that you fly on just crash into the ground. As horrible as it is to say, it's not difficult to put yourself in their position, especially if you've had a couple of scary moments yourself. Just to be there for people and help them progress through that has just been amazing. It's really, really good.
It sounds like a great experience. One of the certainly from an external perspective, one of the biggest setbacks that I've seen probably for anyone involved in the tourism space, one of the biggest setbacks that I've seen in recent history, probably ever, is obviously the COVID period and seeing how that affected you all.
Yeah.
Talk me through that experience.
That was an interesting thing to go through. I had actually experienced a hard landing. And so I was actually offline. I was at work, but offline. So I wasn't flying. I was just in the crew room. And I turned up to work on the Monday where, there was, COVID was coming in. We were aware of it. It wasn't good. And, I may still do it now. I walk into work. I see the departures and arrivals on the board. And I'm like, anything canceled? No. All right, cool. So off we go. And I walked in on the Monday. I'm like, couple of cancellations, no worries. Came in on the Tuesday. I'm like, 5 or 6. Wednesday. And it just became more and more until the Friday where I came in. Oh, sorry, the Thursday when I came in, and it was easily 3/4 of the board was just canceled. And then I made my way into the crew room and they're like, we're going to, they're shutting it down. We're all going to grind to a halt as of tomorrow, and they'll put the aircraft in storage and you'll be stood down until further notice. We're hoping no more than 2 months, which ended up being 9. And the next day I came to work because I knew it was going to be such a unique experience. I brought my camera and it was just like you see in 28 Days Later where there's just no one. You're in a normally bustling environment and there is no one. And I walked down our concourse through our crew room, and outside where our gates are, there's just all of our aircraft lined up. There was so many, and it was the weirdest thing to see. And there was Virgin, Tiger, International Aircraft, Qantas, us, and all lined up on the tarmac everywhere. And I'm like, I'm going to go on the tarmac and get some shots of this because this is really unique. So I have those photos still, and they're really amazing. But on the flip side, it was horrible, absolutely horrible to see such a massive industry grind to a complete stop. And because we were told, potentially it'll be 8 weeks, we're like, okay, well, we can homeschool our kids and, spend some time together. But then, the months started marching on and we get to December and we're like, we really need to get back in the air. So thankfully I got my roster in December of 20 and went back to work, and I've been there ever since. But it was a horrible experience, especially because my wife and I were both flying at the time. And it's like, well, we go from dual income to potentially no income at all. It's really terrifying. So I'm glad we moved through it, and we're all good.
Yeah, what was that like? Because you've got, like you said, your wife's working for the airline as well in the same industry. Certainly, you're both thinking about, we've got to keep the house afloat.
Yeah.
We've got to pay bills, we've got to put food on the table. And then now you've got this absolute uncertainty that you've got no control over whatsoever. Like, how did you cope with that?
We really focused on homeschooling the kids, which was a good distraction. And look, and especially initially, it was such a unique experience that, we did try and find the positive in it. And so that was first lockdown wasn't too bad, but as it progressed, it got worse and worse, especially when I was seeing people that I work with getting other jobs in supermarkets and becoming an essential worker. And we're like, no, we'll just homeschool until we go back to work. But it was one of those, when do you go back to work? So come October, November, that was when we started getting a bit panicky. And so getting that roster in December was a weight off our shoulders. But moving through, honestly, it was actually my youngest, my son, who he kept everything normal. Nothing changed for him. And I reckon that was a massive piece of the puzzle in us getting through. We were all starting to feel, cabin fever and Yeah, he was in kindergarten at the time, and the world didn't stop for him. He just kept going, which was brilliant. And I think that was a huge piece of our sanity kept because of him.
Oh, that's amazing. That's yeah, really, really lovely. And yeah, I think kids really, yeah, they do make all the difference in moments like that, don't they? They just re sort of center you in many ways.
Yeah, most certainly.
How did having kids change you as a person?
Um, I think it pushed everything about me to the extreme. So I have never experienced a love that deep. Um, and when my first was born, I was howl crying. Like it was primal. Because it's so overwhelming. Same with my youngest. It's a thing that you just never get sick of. It was such a massive experience. On the flip side, they push you to the edge of the cliff, dangle you over it. But that's what they do. They're funny little people. But for me, it's taught me patience, not respect, but an appreciation, because one thing I adore is how the world is to them. I love learning about the world as they see it. As they get older, it gets a little bit easier because we can communicate better.
Yeah.
So that certainly helps. When they were really little, that was challenging and frustrating, as I'm sure every other parent who's gone through it can attest to. But I like to. It actually, I noticed it with my wife more than me. It really calmed her down, and I think it made her appreciate more of what's important to her, which was great to see. But for me, I've always wanted to be a dad. Always. Ever since I was 17, 18, the thought of having my own kids just totally appealed to me. So there was an element of satisfaction becoming a dad. It's been the best thing I've ever done. Yeah. I wouldn't really know how to describe it. Um, but, I would love to give you an answer, a fluffy answer, like, "Oh, I'm all calm and peaceful," and it's just not true. Like, you get, you get angry and you fly off the handle, and I think, especially because, they're not just kids, they're little people, and really need to look at it like that. But if I make a mistake now, I instantaneously correct it. I own my shortcomings, and in that regard, they have taught me a lot about a temper. There's nothing more pathetic than, I'll give you an example. When many, many years ago, I was feeding my son and he was doing something silly. So he was my youngest. And then the oldest was just pestering me. And I was trying to film him, the little one. And what I caught was me having a crack at my oldest. And when I watched it back, I was horrified because I'm 6'1" and 100 kilos. And there's this little kid with the dad's finger in the face like that. And it was really horrible to watch. And I'm like, oh, I'm never doing that again. Like, never doing it again. So I'm thankful that mirror was held up to me and I could actually see that happening. So I've never done that again. But, now they're taller. I can do it if I want.
I love that. I love that, and it's great that you learn from it too. If anyone tells me they're cool, calm, and collected all the time, I think they're lying. No, like they do.
Yeah.
They challenge every bit of you for better or worse. I certainly love the age that my daughter's at now, where she's 2, and you've
Yeah.
experienced this twice, where she's turning into a bit of a dictator. She's the one pointing the fingers,
Yeah.
and the simplest things like getting her dressed or getting her out the door to the car is tough, and she
Yeah.
really pushes the boundaries. But that's all their part of learning too. And I've certainly I appreciate you saying about those reflective moments, because it's been the same for both my fiance and I too. We've had those moments and we talk about it and we hold each other accountable as well, which
Yeah.
I think is really important, as I'm sure that you and your wife have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We always have each other's backs. If one of us steps out of line within reason, we'll call each other out. It doesn't happen often now because you develop teamwork. The only thing that that Emma and I are different on, and it's purely our own upbringings that have affected it. I'm an only child, got it right the first time. Emma's one of, and so when my kids kick off, she lets them go in the idea that they'll sort it out, and if she needs to interject, she will. But the moment they kick off for me, I'm like, nah, straight in. Nope, not happening. I don't want to know about it. That's been challenging because I'm like, why is she not getting involved?
And then M's like, why are you getting involved at all? Like this early? Like they've got to develop these skills. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're right. So, there are little challenges like that. And it's just about balancing it out between each other, Yeah, I obviously don't like fighting. And because I never experienced that as a kid, to see it now is really, you try and deal with it as quick as you can because you don't want them to go out and be like that in real life and then not. But, and look, generally they get along great, generally.
Yeah.
But they have their moments.
No, don't we all?
Yeah.
That's great. And yeah, teamwork's such a critical component, as you mentioned.
Mm.
Now, I'm going to switch gears, mate. Like as I said, I really wanted to spend some time on your mum and the grief diaries with this call. Again, I was watching them back over the last few days. It's just absolutely incredible what you did there. I'm sure I won't be the only one that's told you that that just makes such a significant impact. And I think there's plenty of stuff in there for people to learn. When did you first learn that your mum was unwell?
So that was December 6th, 2023. So mum's cancer it is adrenal cortical carcinoma, and it is literally a 1 in a million cancer. So in the States, it's 1 out of every million people has it. So in Australia, it's exceptionally rare as it is over there. But she was experiencing, and we just thought she was loopy, she was, for a long time going, I have this like heartbeat in my ear, this doo-doo, doo-doo. I can hear it. I can hear my heartbeat. And I'm like, must be, I don't know, high blood pressure. So she went and got tested for everything and was coming back negative, and the doctors couldn't work it out. And then there was 1 or 2 times where she actually said it at night when she was lying in bed that she could hear the blood coursing through her body. I'm like, that is weird. Like, that's weird. So anyway, they ran all sorts of tests, couldn't figure out what it was, which I think kind of put us not at peace, but it was just a bit like, well, it can't be anything too serious if they can't really work out what it is. They couldn't test for adrenal cortical carcinoma because they had no idea what it was. But eventually they worked out that there was a growth on her kidney, I think it was. And she was going in for a biopsy the next day. And mum had said to me, it's just, it's little, but they want to deal with it and they want to take it out. I'm like, yeah, of course. So the next day I got a phone call from her saying, okay, so there is a tumor, but it's not just little, it has engulfed the entire organ. And at no stage did mum say it was stage 4 because she didn't want to say it, but it was very serious. And it was stage 4. And so that began her journey into treatment. And so she was at Peter Mac for a bit, and then they live near the Austin Hospital, so they spent a lot of time in Olivia Newton-John, which was amazing, an amazing facility with incredible people in it. We were forever grateful to them. And so, yeah, she was going through chemo treatments and eventually started doing radiation treatment as well. And so there was just this, I guess, this pattern of normality within that. And so mum and dad were dealing with that, and I kept going to work. Like I said, I was training new crew, and I was spending most of my time in Bali, training new crew out of Bali base. One morning I woke up, it was about 5 a.m. and I could see my son's basketball team's WhatsApp parent thing just going off. And it was all the registration. Anyway, so my phone rang and it was my wife. And it said, I think you need to come home. And it was just like the bottom of everything fell out. And I'm like, well, what happened? And she said, they think your mum's had a stroke. I'm like, okay. And I couldn't, it was the only time in my life so far where I have been unable to function. So all I could say was, okay. Now, thankfully, M works with the company. She was cabin manager at the time. And she was literally directing me on what to do. So she said, I'll call our crewing, I'll call managers, I'll get you on the next flight out. All you need to do is get up, go in the shower and get ready, get dressed. And I'm like, okay. And that's all I could do. I couldn't even function, couldn't think because it was 5 o'clock in the morning. I was exhausted and it wasn't really what I was expecting. So anyway, Get back home, and a massive story short again, the cancer had spread to her brain. And so that was when we started noticing this decline in speech in terms of physical ability. And that was when frailty started kicking in a bit. And that was hard because mum had always been very physical. She actually has a plaque on the wall in the Melbourne City Baths as one of the longest serving members. So she was very active, led a very healthy lifestyle. And so for this to sort of take her down it was brutal, absolutely brutal. I think it got to a point where she was hospitalized in Olivia Newton-John. And then, so I spent most of my time there with my dad. And then November of 23, I spoke to work and said, listen, we're going to look at moving mum home because the doctors had, basically implied that her journey was coming to an end. And so I became a full-time carer with dad. What I didn't expect was that I was going to be a full-time carer for my dad because he was 100% focused on mum. And so he needed someone to really help him. And of course I was, doing stuff for mum and all that kind of stuff, but I just wanted to support him so that he could support mum. And 27th of November, she passed away. And it was, I guess because I was in that environment, of course it was heartbreaking. It was a horrific circumstance, but it was expected. And at the time it seemed somewhat easy to deal with. And it's funny you say that you watched the videos because I actually went back and watched the first video not too long ago. And I was actually shocked at how I used the word detached when I was explaining it to my wife, but it was, it didn't have the emotion that I have now. So I don't know if it was just this self-preservation kind of switching off maybe, but progressively over time, you settle with the feeling of it. By no means is this journey over at all. In fact, we're actually going back to Scotland on Sunday to go and spread mum's ashes, which is her request. And I know I've already said to Em, it feels like we're gearing up to lose her for a third time. We lost her obviously when she passed. When she was cremated, it felt like losing her again. And now 6 months, 7 months later, we're going to, scatter her ashes. And it's just a bit, it's going to suck in a big way, but it's something that we need to do. I'm hoping that it's sort of the closure of that journey because it really feels incomplete at the moment, but it has been. And that's part of the reason I did those diaries or the journals, was because I wanted to look back on it myself and see that journey. I know that this will be a forever thing. Whenever you lose a loved one, I don't think it's something you ever get over. It just becomes a new level of normality and adjustment. And so, yes, that was part of the reason. And if people connect to it, and they can speak to me about their experiences, or if they can help me in any way, then that's also part of the reason I put it out there, was experience of other people, And I have had some amazing contact with people that have gone through something similar. It's weird losing a parent. So weird. Yeah. I do not recommend it. Not at all. No, it's not cool.
No, not at all, mate. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's
You
okay.
mentioned that you said something powerful actually in that first video, and you sort of referenced it there, where you sort of had when she passed and that week afterwards, you sort of had these out of body experiences where you'd kind of be detached, and then all of a sudden you'd come back in, and it just floods you.
Yeah.
I found that really powerful, and it was a similar experience that I'd had. But are you able to explain that now that that you're a bit further down the track?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was. Looking back on it, it was like I said, a self-preservation thing to sort of stay mechanical, I suppose. And then, you kind of dipping your toe into the pool of grief and letting yourself connect to reality. And because it was still fresh, it was just a tsunami of feelings. And it's the realization that everything you had that you, not flippantly, but that you just kind of, you just had it forever, is gone. So there's no more funny comments. There's no more Christmases together. There's no more, one of the things that mum always said to me when we would get off the phone, she'd always say, "Cheery bye." Cheery bye is like one of my most favorite things in the world. That little sentence. And I will never hear that from her again. And whilst it is, something tiny, but it just, made me feel like $1,000,000 when I'd hear it from her. And it's just letting go of that. I still have it. Also, in here, I hear it all the time. But that's what essentially I meant by that out of body experience, coming in and then flooding with grief, just allowing yourself to experience it. You don't need to submerge yourself into grief. This is something that I have worked out through, many people telling me you don't need to submerge yourself into it. You can just go, incrementally and at your own pace, but you can't avoid it. You have to deal with it. And it is very much a work in progress. Yeah. Yeah. Grief is an interesting beast. That's for sure.
And you got these fucking triggers, right? Like you actually mentioned one of those videos about Peter Gabriel in those early days.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a song. It's a song called Father Son, and I can't listen to it. I've never been able to listen to it and not cry, like never. And there's a lyric in there that just triggers me every single time. And as time goes on, because initially I found it really difficult to cry. Nothing would come out. And there have been little instances where, it's allowed me to release the valve a bit. Even I think 2 weeks ago, I for the first time went through my messages from mum and found all these voice messages and started listening to them. And my wife came in and had this big smile on my face with tears in my eyes. And then again, the realization that I'm never going to get another phone call from her hit me like a ton of bricks, and I lost it. And the thing with that is, like I said, I've lost friends and it's upsetting. And of course you cry, but I cried from a place that was like there, like in your soul. And it was this, I wouldn't even know how to describe it. It's just like primal, this deep seated loss. And it feels good. It feels good getting it out. It really does. But it's, you can't be too self-conscious about it. You kind of just have to, let yourself go through it. And I don't think I'll revisit those messages for a little bit because it's obviously still raw. But again, it's just a case of dipping your toe in on your journey of grief to see kind of, where you're at. Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
You were feeling really isolated at one point in those videos where I thought you actually articulated it really well, where you said the first week was just, you're getting all these calls, messages, visitors to your door, food, everything. And then you said by sort of week 3, week 4, it's like it's radio silence.
Yes.
And you're starting to feel this real sense of isolation, and it actually caused you a bit of anger and frustration.
It did. Yeah. You know what? I'm probably better off going back to watch the video, but I do remember that. And I think I remember saying something to I may have even said it in the video. You can't expect the world to stop turning. The world does move on. People have their own lives to live, and life is complicated. But it seemed, and I like I said, I have a brilliant circle of friends that they've kept in touch, and I get messages, often, just checking in, seeing how you are. But it felt really, like I said, it's just this gusto of communication, and then it all goes away and it's silence, and then you're kind of left with nothing. And it's the same when you have a baby, like the first couple of weeks, people want to come visit and then nothing, which in some ways is good, but it's, I do remember being really angry, but I also remember, thinking, people's lives don't stop. Everyone else has a lot of other things that they're going through, and you have to understand that. But I do remember being really angry. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Well, it's also part of that grief pattern, right? Because, like you said, you're almost suppressing these tears and things like that.
Yeah.
It's got to come out somewhere. There's these pressure valves, and I think that anger piece is actually part of that process. I sort of, for me, when my best friend passed away, he died over in New Zealand, and I sort of went back as quick as I could, jumped on a plane, went over there. I don't think I cried the entire time I was over in New Zealand. Once, I think when I saw him the first time, obviously it hit then, it was real, right?
Yeah.
But apart from that, nothing. I sort of felt, and you probably even felt the same at times, like you almost feel this responsibility to be strong for everyone else around you in a way.
Yeah.
And then obviously the funeral, and then come home, and then whoosh, And again, similar to you, messages stop, and then all this grief is starting to flood to you. And at this point, it's weeks later, and you have to go back to work. You're back to rehearsals or whatever the hell else you're doing at the time. You've got responsibilities, and you're like, why the fuck is everything else moving on and I can't? And it's hitting me now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard. That is hard. The one thing I was really nervous about was going back to work, because it's a unique environment, the fact that you work with different people every day. So it's not like you go back to work in an office or something and you see the same people and you just have to get through that first half an hour, 20 minutes of, how are you doing? Is everything okay? It was months of that every day, going to work and seeing people that you hadn't seen. And then you have to go through the rigmarole of everything constantly. But then you find that it stops. It just slowly stops. And then everything is okay again. But that was really difficult, like having to explain every day for a couple of months, how you're doing. And people are, they want to know how you are. They care. They want to know. But that was challenging. It was exhausting, but I think in a lot of cases, as with a lot of things, the idea is much worse than the reality. And it's hard to be annoyed at people that really just want to know how you're doing and they care. But like I said, I still have friends that ask me how I'm doing, and it's so lovely. It's great. It's really, I'm thankful, really thankful for them.
This is a quote from you as well. You said, I believe death was like a full stop, but something shifted when you saw your mum towards the end there. It was like she wasn't there. And that was the first time you felt the reality, the body was a vessel, but you went through this sort of spiritual journey after that.
Yeah, and that's been challenging. It has been challenging because I don't know how to start that journey of spirituality. So I'm working through it. But the day before she passed was when I was thinking to myself, I remember saying to Dad, and I did not word this well at all. I looked at her and I said to Dad, she's not there anymore. And then, of course, we're like, oh my God. I'm like, no. Like, she's alive, but she's not there. Like, she's not there. You can just see it's a vessel. And, the next day when she was going through like the death rattle and all that kind of stuff, it was really apparent. She just wasn't there. There was no spirit. There was no energy. It just wasn't there. It was literally looking at like a battery, like slowing down and wearing down. And that was the first time in, 45 at that time, 44. But it was the first time that I had challenged my own thoughts about that. I did think that, like, life is, when you die, it's full stop. You go in the ground or you get cremated and off you go. And having seen someone's life diminish, it was, totally changed my mind. Like, that energy has to go somewhere. It's, you can put it in the context of someone Obviously, I knew my mum really, really well, and she was a typhoon of energy. Like, she was just like, my kids would come home from being at their Mimi and Poppy's house wiped out. So she had a lot of energy, and just to see this energy gone was really amazing. Like, wow, okay, maybe I've got this all wrong. And it's not religious because, I'm not a religious person. I don't buy into it. But spiritual, like, it has to go somewhere. This energy, this soul, this, entity or whatever, it has to go somewhere. It's been something I have been looking at on and off since. But I'll be honest, recently I haven't, we've had a lot going on, but I haven't really thought too much about it. But it changed my mind. Being present for that changed my mind.
No, it actually really reminded me of a call that I'd had with my friend in the days leading up to his passing. He said to me this particular night, he'd gone to church a couple of times. Wasn't a religious person, but he'd gone to church a couple of times, and he said, I feel like I've found something. I've found this inner peace, and it feels spiritual, but like I don't know what it is, but like I've felt something, and I just felt this real like peace within him.
Yeah.
It was the strangest call, and I'm fucking grateful for that call.
Yeah.
Knowing he felt like that before the car accident, but like, it was, to me, it was just like a bit of a sign.
Yeah.
It just felt like something's coming here. I'm not sure what it is, but like, if he feels like that, to me, it was a sign. And you actually said about signs in the days after in a different context, but obviously that spiritual journey. But then you You mentioned about the wind in the
Yeah.
days after as well.
Yeah. It was like every time I did have an you just reminded me, I forgot about that. I did have a moment where I think it was in the backyard of the old place. I can't remember exactly where I was, but there was no wind. There was nothing. And I don't remember what I was doing. I can't remember. But this gust of warm wind came through and it was just like a hug. And that's the way it felt. It just was like, that's mum. It was, again, whether or not any of this is accurate remains to be seen. But for me, that's what I got from it. That's the way I felt. And it felt amazing. And it was just these warm breezes. I just get, little things happening here and there that were just like, okay, cool. She's around. She's around. And it does give you a little bit of peace. Like I said, having experienced this energy gone, yeah, I can't help but feel she's around. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really special.
Yeah.
I've taken a lot of your time, so we'll start to wrap up. But I
Oh,
thought there
good,
was a really pivotal piece of advice in those videos where you said last minute gift idea. This is nearly word for word.
Yeah.
Last minute gift idea.
Yeah.
However you do it, tell someone what they mean to you and how much you love them,
Yeah.
or at least something along those lines is what you
Yeah.
said. And you were able to do that with your mum before she
Yeah.
passed. And I thought that was so special the way you said that. And I thought it was a great lesson.
Yeah, that was just prior to Christmas. It wasn't planned by any stretch. I was actually next to mum in her hospital bed, sort of just leaning on the bed. And I don't know how it came about, but she said something. I can't remember what it was, but I started just by saying, you're an awesome mum. And then she looked at me and it just came out. And I got to say, it was almost just a stream of unconsciousness. I got to say everything from, how amazing she was when I was a kid and how supportive she was when as an adult. And one of the things I found really interesting in her final year was, yeah, of course she'll always be my mom, but there was another level of, I don't really want to say friendship, but I don't know, there was just another level of the relationship that opened up. And so you kind of look at your parents a little bit differently in a really good way. More of a human side of it. And I was so, so thankful that I got to experience that with mum. And, now I experience it with dad as well. And it's forever grateful for that. But it is, it was a unique experience. I could not recommend it enough to tell the people that you love exactly what they mean to you and what you think of them and how much you love them. It sounds, a bit wishy-washy and a bit, treacle sweet, but it's such a gift, even to be able to do it, to be able to say to someone because parents, there's a lot of people that never get that opportunity. They lose their parents. And, I think another thing that was really reinforced with mum passing was, mum was 70 when she passed. That's not old. 70 is not old, especially when she was the way she was. Her nickname was the kamikaze gardener because she, without word of a lie, I cannot begin to tell you how many phone calls I had from ER going, I'm okay. I am in the ER. I'm okay though. And of course, just ridiculous stories would follow through. And so Kamikaze Gardner was what she was known as. And that's the way she was, just this ball of energy, very physical. So when I say she was 70, no impairments at all. Like, she was all over it. And where was I going with this? Tell people what you mean to them. Oh yeah, life is short. Life is genuinely fucking short, And it becomes really reinforced when you lose someone you love, you end up in a job that you adore, and you can't believe you've gone so long without actually doing it. You end up in a relationship that it supersedes everything you thought a relationship could be. You have amazing kids if you want kids, and it's so enriching, and it makes you appreciate life, and it makes you appreciate people. And that's the one thing I adore the most about my job is I get to work with almost 1,000 people a day, and they're all different. And I get to learn from all of them, and I get to have an absolute blast at what I do. And that has brought me a level of peace and thankfulness that I hadn't had 17 years earlier. All I want to do is give that back, through even little things like shouting someone a coffee who's in the line behind me. You're just a microscopic little thing that can totally change someone's day. We should all be doing it, and be genuine and ask people how they are, all that kind of stuff. You know, we see it online all the time. I use this as an example, and of course it's more broad, but Are You Okay Day? It's a brilliant initiative. It is brilliant, but every day is Are You Okay Day? You know, there's a lot of people not putting their mouth where their money is. You know, there's a lot of social media sharing about all sorts of things and causes and whatnot, but when it comes to the crunch, we're not there. Be there and do it. Get involved. You know, that's all I could say. Is just invest yourself into people. It's the best thing. It's the best thing I've ever done.
Amen, brother. I think that's a great place to end it. Hey, thanks, mate. I really appreciate this, and I think wherever your mum is, she was watching this because it looks like it's all working pretty well.
Thoroughly enjoyed it, mate. Like I said last time, it's such an awesome thing you're doing. You know, I'm really excited to see everyone else's stories.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Easy, dude. No stress.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Drop Balls and Big Calls. If you want to support the show, please follow, subscribe, or leave a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you know someone who's got a story to tell, please get in touch. You can contact me on bigcallspod@gmail.com. We're always looking for the next guest. Or if something here hit home for you, helped you feel seen, or just made you think, please share it with a mate. That's enough for me. I appreciate you just being here. And remember, we all drop the ball sometimes. What matters is what you do next. I'm Jason. Thanks for listening.